Welcome to Draft Sickos on the No Ceilings NBA YouTube channel and podcast feed. This is the show where we discuss everybody from the biggest of names to the deepest of sleepers, and that is what we are going to do tonight. And there's nobody better to do that with than my host for this evening, Jam Hines. Jam, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Got a chance to hoop this morning and then watch some football, and now we're about to talk some prospects and get the season started. So I'm excited.
For sure. How is how are you feeling mentally as we go from kind of getting to enjoy basketball life a little bit, enjoy some NBA games, to now it's like, all right, we're in the full swing of the draft cycle now. Like, get the international guys going, but now it's everybody. How are you kind of feeling?
Excited to go full sicko mode. Like, honestly, like to really to go deep diving into everything. Like, this is the time that we've all been waiting for, and just excited to really dive in.
I am too. I always do my game schedule like a week in advance for the games I need to like make sure that I watch. And I did that today. I was like, it's here. Here we go. Yep. I'm ready to lock in. So let's do it. So this week we wanted to talk about, I have a column that's going to be out tomorrow. So if you aren't already, subscribe to NoCeilingsNBA.com, our Substack, daily written work. I'll occasionally hear from people. They're like, oh yeah, I love the podcast. Like, and then like they'll mention that they don't read my articles. What are you doing? Read the articles too. I love the articles. I go even sicker in the articles than I do on the podcast. If you like this podcast, you're gonna love the articles. So subscribe there. Read the written work.
They're awesome. Please check it out.
Absolutely. And Jam's gonna have written work for us this year too. So you're gonna want to check that out. I've got a gigantic column previewing the 10 must-scout games in week one. So that's kind of one that I wanted to talk to Jam about today, is some of the games that we're really looking forward to in this first week of the schedule. And there are two games from Baylor this week. The first one, Monday night against Gonzaga, super late tip-off, post-Monday Night Football tip-off. Thank God for Synergy, so I can watch that one early Tuesday morning instead. Love the folks over at Synergy. But that is kind of the game on night one. There's some other good ones that we'll get to later. But we got Baylor versus Gonzaga, night one of the season. Jam, what are you looking forward to in that game?
I mean, how could we start any other place than Mr. VJ Edgecombe? I mean, a potential top 3 pick in the class. You saw what he did in the Olympic qualifiers, and he just seems to be ready to take the college world by storm. Two-way guard, explosive physical tools. I think he's a really reliable shooter as well. We'll see how much point guard he can ultimately play. That's something I'm really looking forward to seeing this season, to see how that shakes out for him. I've heard I'm sure you've heard some different names thrown out for him, especially Victor Oladipo. So that's, a potential name for him. I want to see what you think about it's early, but a souped up Norman Powell, how that makes you feel potentially.
Okay. I like that. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to see what he does leading the way, and what he does, especially as a playmaker. And I'm hoping Michael Ayaji on the other end for Gonzaga gets a chance to defend him on the other end. He's a guy who I'm super excited about. Steven did a tremendous interview with him last year, and so did recently, I believe it's Jacob from Leakham as well, just talking about his upbringing, his late blooming status, and the late growth spurt, and almost quitting basketball 1 year of varsity basketball and everything. So terrific story for a 3-and-D guy. So that matchup and those two guys are leading the way for me in that game.
Yeah, I can't wait for that one. I think VJ is like obviously where we got to start off. So VJ Edgecombe's a super interesting prospect. So he, I believe, measured like 6'3" barefoot with a 6'6" wingspan, which for like a combo kind of guard can be a little bit scary. I think with VJ, the reason that you don't sweat that as much is athletically, like he is outrageous. Like he's really fast. He can really jump. Like he is a high-end athlete, which is why like you get the Victor Oladipo comp. You've got to earn that one. That's someone that they just like throw on any combo. I think with Edgecombe, like you mentioned, I sort of buy the shot. I like the shot. I think his passing decision making is pretty good. And I thought that was one of the interesting things in those Bahama national teams games where he was kind of playing alongside a bunch of other dudes who like are NBA guys, was I thought that he looked really comfortable really poised, especially when it was sort of pared down and roll and he could kind of quickly make a decision. I thought he showed a little bit more creativity than we'd seen from him previously. I kind of trust him in that respect. I think where I'm interested to see how he shapes out is against a team like this Gonzaga team, where Nolan Hickman and like Ryan Nembhard are not like lockdown guards. Like they're far from that. They're really good offensive guards, and they're going to test him a little bit on the other side of the floor. But Edgecombe should be able to like generate some penetration against them, and I'm intrigued to see how well like the handle and processing holds up when it's going downhill in traffic. Like that's what I want to see is like, is he going to be keeping the ball tight? If he's forced in a different direction, if he's forced to go left, like, is he going to hold up well in that sense? Are guys going to be able to get digs on him and knock the ball loose? Like, I really want to see where the ball handling is at, especially when he's like getting into the heart of the paint against Gonzaga.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent point. And for him to be able to get in the paint, make plays against the bigs, that's going to be an incredible thing to watch with his athleticism, is to see how he also thinks when he gets to the paint, like you said, the decision making, if he's going to try to use footwork to get into something, find the different finishing angles and kick outs, drop offs, and those different types of things. And I think it also goes back to, even if he doesn't play point guard, if he can run pick and roll and be that dual threat as a scorer and a reliable decision maker, I think just with any lead scorer, lead guard, whatever you want, who's going to be supposed to be your main scorer, you want to see how they play off that gravity and make decisions and make other people better, even if they aren't going to play that point guard role.
For sure. And it's interesting that you like that, like perfectly ties in the next thing I want to talk about with him is like, this isn't a comp I would make, because I think from like a ball skill, like polish standpoint at the same age, this other current NBA player is like ahead of where Edgecombe is, but I would like to see Edgecombe borrow some stuff from Tyrese Maxey as far as like that stampede dribble, that like catch and go speed. Because I feel like there are times where he can almost play a little bit less athletic than he is. And I don't know if that's like him not being assured of his handle in the half court and like being a little bit more hesitant to attack the rim. He might not have that same kind of like polish downhill that Maxey had, as far as like being able to just like go to a counter if a guy does get in his way as a help defender. Like I don't know that he has that yet, but that's a guy that like I see the development that Maxey has had as far as like his comfort reading the floor downhill. And like, those are the steps I want to see Edgecombe take, is like taking those steps forward as a passer over the next several years. Like, I'm not saying like, hey, why, if this isn't there day one against Baylor, I'm out. Like, I'm not saying that at all. I love
no
VJ.
chance.
Yeah. Like, but I'm just saying like long-term, that's kind of a guy that I'd be interested in. And Maxey, like to your point, is that kind of guy where like he's become that point guard for Philadelphia. But the first couple of years, it was sort of always playing off of somebody else. It was like always somebody else is the lead, and then Maxey can kind of be that secondary playmaker. I do think VJ has that sort of potential to get to that point. Like, yeah, if he can run your pick and roll, and then somebody else is kind of handling the bulk of that, if he's your second guy, that's like a dynamite type of change of pace you could have if it all comes to fruition for him. The other like big tip of the hat I want to give Edgecombe is I thought like body and frame wise, he came a long way when you look at him in those national team games this summer. Like, this guy, I think, has kind of clearly been putting in the work physically. Like, I looked at some of my notes going back to the season prior to his senior year of high school versus now. And it's like, oh, I'm like way less worried about him, like body and frame wise as a two than I was a year ago.
Yeah, I completely agree. You love the work that he's put in. That's the type of stuff that you absolutely want to see from prospects. And when you count into what he's done to his body, continue to add strength to that frame, mature muscle on top of that explosive athleticism, these are like really legitimate physical tools that he knows how to leverage. And I think on both ends of the floor, and will continue to learn how to leverage those as he gets older.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then on the Gonzaga time side of things, you mentioned Michael Ajayi. What a journey for that guy. I reread Steven's article the other day, like just digging back in for some research. And yeah, he was like a C team player, he said, in high school. Like, he didn't even make the B team initially. This guy, yeah, he was 5'7", didn't hit 6'3" or 6'4" until like his senior year of high school. So these late growth spurt guys, who's kind of seen a lot of them in recent years have success, your Jalen Williams, your Ben Shepherds, your Dalton Connects, a lot of the times these guys can kind of sneak up on radars because maybe they don't have a big RSCI number next to their name, but then by the time they come out for the draft, they've passed up a lot of guys that were ahead of them 4 years ago. Jai's an interesting prospect. He was a great scorer at Pepperdine last year. Rebounded the ball really, really well too.
Love
total that. Like definition of like pro frame as far as like 6'6", 7 foot plus wingspan, big standing reach, good athlete, plays really hard. I'm really just excited to see him in this new environment because I thought at Pepperdine last year, like Pepperdine just hasn't been a great defensive program in general. The last couple of years. So like I thought he left a little something to be desired at times defensively, but I'm interested to see what that looks like in a new scheme. And like the ball kind of got stuck on that team a little bit, and that hasn't been the case as much at Gonzaga. So I'm really interested to see how he can develop on those two fronts because I think he has a really safe floor. It's like when you are built like that and you play that hard and you're willing to do the little things, it gives you a really strong safety net. Like he'd almost have to like work to not be on a two-way at worst a year from now. But I think because that late growth trajectory, the work ethic, like the character stuff you hear on him is awesome. Like there's a really big path for his improvement. Like how do you kind of gauge him at this point in the cycle heading into the year?
I think you summed it up perfectly, especially with him being a really safe prospect. And I think with a fairly high floor as well. I do think by the end of the year and maybe midway through the year, he should be creating some first round buzz, whether that's end of the first round, but 3 and deep guy, talk about the body, 7 foot wingspan. He shot 47% from 3 on 2.5 attempts. You want to see that volume go up a little bit.
Sure.
But he shot everywhere that he's been. And we talk about the JUCO
mid-range
level as well,
were
too.
really good. Yeah.
Yes,
so, like,
I love the pull-up game.
Mm-hmm.
It really is, and the touch and the willingness to do the little things. And we've talked about it before. I just love wings and guards that rebound. Anytime you can take the pressure off of bigs, and then if you can want to go small and you have a wing and guards who are going to rebound, just what type of value, tremendous value that brings. So I really, really am excited about what he's going to do. And if he has some good moments or maybe a really good game defensively when edge comes, that can definitely turn some heads and really catapult him up a lot of boards for people.
Mm-hmm. So those are kind of the big names. I do want to get into sicko territory a little bit.
Yes,
Who's like give me like one name on Baylor and one name on Gonzaga that maybe aren't like the biggest draft names that you're like, I actually think this guy like could be a pro, like at the NBA level, potentially.
I'm going to stick with Jaden Nunn. I like him a lot.
Yes.
Let's go. So like I really love Jaden Nunn. I thought he had a really good transition coming up and getting to Baylor. More of a 3 and D guard. He's in that 6'3" range. I wish he was more like 6'5" or so, but I think he could defend both guard spot. He's really effective at point of attack, long arms, quick hands, like he will really get after you, and he can shoot the ball. Like he can really shoot it, whether it's on the ball, off the ball. He's best as a spot up shooter, and then he can also play pick and rolls for you as well too. So when you have a guy who slide in, play 3 and D, will do the little things, and can also run ball screens for you on the second side, attack closeouts. Like I'm in on that, and we'll probably hear this a lot going forward today, but I think he's going to be a PIT guy. Never too early for PIT. So I'm really excited about him. Do you want to talk about him? Let me go to Gonzaga guy now.
Yeah, I want to sneak in some Jaden Nunn talk as well.
Yes,
I love Jaden Nunn. So when I did my article for tomorrow, most of the guys that like weren't really on the radar, I was like, here's just a couple sentences on these guys. I gave Jaden Nunn a full paragraph because like I love Jaden Nunn. He's so much of what what I love in a guard exemplified. He, to your point, can really shoot the 3. He's over 40% from 3 for his college career, can pull up from 3, can shoot threes off the catch, really good, like low mistake decision maker, picks guys up the full length of the court, like really gets after it on defense. And I think like one of the more underrated improvement guys over the last few years were like his freshman year at VCU. I liked him. Really struggled to finish inside, was really skinny, like frame his filled out. He looks like a different person physically, like just put on so much good weight, got so much better at the basket. the argument against him, I think, is going to be like the usage. Like he's been a really low usage guy throughout his college career. That's always a little tricky because generally you want the guys that can do a lot. You can pare that down versus taking the complementary guys, hoping they can scale up. But like to me, like I just look at like so many guards that are just like those really tough defensive first guards that have managed to like find a way to stick around the NBA. And so few of them can shoot like Jaden Nunn that even if Jaden Nunn doesn't have like this big usage year, big splash year, it's like, God, what I would kill to like get that guy in my G League program and just like see if I can get anything more out of him there. And then maybe on the margins, I find this like guard that can shoot threes and play a couple positions and he doesn't need the ball. Like I would love to buy low on Jaden Nunn if the opportunity presented itself. But I do think there's a chance he kind of blows up. But back to Gonzaga, who would kind of be your sleeper name over there?
Man, this was a tough one for me. For Gonzaga, and went for a couple guys. I'll only say one, and I'll see who you kind of go with. But
Sure.
I'm going to go with Braden Huff. Just any time that you have a guy nearly 7 feet, potentially can stretch the floor, block shots. That's always something to track and to be willing to invest in. We'll see if everything does materialize for him. He shot 33% last year. If he can continue to move up that number, continue to protect the rim, and be fluid and mobile out in space, I think he's definitely a sleeper guy to track.
I agree. I actually agree. He was a guy that I kept my eyes on a little bit last year. He's from around where I'm from. It's like I was familiar with him during his high school run here. And yeah, like when I was reading the column, like you just look back and the numbers are better than I think I realized. I obviously knew he could score inside out, but like some of the stuff I knocked him for, I think he was a little further along than I'd give him credit for. I'll go with Ben Gregg is my guy, like another guy where like the usage case is like really tricky, but he's really good at the big picture stuff. He's 6'10", 37.7% from three each of the last 2 years on good volume. Like not the fastest guy, but uses his length really well on defense, creates a bunch of stocks because of it. I don't know like how much in between he has. He's not fast chased off the line. I don't like the handle, but like, I don't know, 6'10", you shoot like that, you make plays on defense. Like I could see him getting a summer league thing and maybe that turns into something. Like, I don't know. Like he's just another guy where it's like, I think there's worse players that teams could kick the tires on than a Ben Gregg who does the important things really well. We've got one more Baylor game this week. They're also going to play Arkansas. That game is going to be, I believe, Saturday. That's a Saturday game. Arkansas is a fascinating team. I guess I'm just going to open with this. Of the players on Arkansas, who is your favorite prospect going into this draft cycle?
Man, they do have a lot of fun and intriguing prospects.
Yeah.
It's tough not to go with Boogie. Boogie
Sure,
Fran, especially the way that he started when the exhibition games, you saw him be able to play pick and roll, be able to get to the middies, the touch there, the pull-ups from deep in there, get to the rim, playmaking, the defensive activity as well too. So I think he's off to a really, really strong start. And if he hit that backcourt with him and Wagner would be very, very interesting. And I do think that they will kind of be the keys to that Arkansas offense and the team in general, with Boogie really leading the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he's probably the guy I've got highest on my board on this team this year. Like really, really great showing in the exhibition games for them. And we've got somebody else that we're going to mention on the exhibition game front in just a moment. But yeah, like that deep range, quick release. Like I love how he decelerates in his shot into a shot too. Like one of those guys who can just go from that breakneck speed to like, oh, it's like he's up and it's out of his hands. And yeah, it probably has to grow a little bit as a playmaker, but I thought that there were also times where like he was really deceptive as far as how he looked off his passes and just stuff like that, where it's like, man, when you're a dynamic like pull-up guy, just that little extra bit of deception can go such a long way. That I really liked seeing that out of him. And I thought defensively, like obviously he's short, he's skinny, whatever, but like there were moments where I was really impressed by his timing and instincts off the ball defensively. And it's like, you're going to need that. Like that's really good to see at the prep level for sure. The other guy who really showed out in their scrimmage games I'm fascinated to talk about is DJ Wagner, who was really buzzy coming out of high school. Personally, like I wasn't really into him coming out of high school. And then I feel like last year it was so up and down. Like, and there were times where like, oh man, like the passing looks really good. He's getting to the rim a ton, like really, really pressured the rim at a super high level. Like his like the percentage of half court shots that he took at the rim grades out with like elite rim pressure guards. Like genuinely did a phenomenal job of using the combination of his power, his handle, his speed to get to the rim consistently. Kentucky was a lot worse when he was off the court, which like if you're playing on a team with like Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham and they're the guys that come in for you, like it's hard to be better than those two. So like
exactly.
I sort of give him a break there. But then like I looked at some of the advanced numbers, like he ended the year with a negative BPM, really struggled from three. The touch around the basket like really came and went, like ended up shooting pretty poorly everywhere, needs to get more efficient. I'm perplexed by DJ Wagner because there's times where I totally see it. Like I love the rim pressure. I love the speed. I thought the passing was probably like ahead of schedule. And then the scoring stuff was really tricky. But a lot of times I think these are the guys that come back for year two and they make that big step forward. I'm just in total wait and see mode with him because like it is such a perplexing situation with him. How are you feeling about DJ Wagner going into the second year of his college career, now following John Calipari from Kentucky to Arkansas?
Certainly have to be optimistic based on the exhibition showing for sure. But just like you, I'm in wait and see mode, and I think that's the best approach for him. You know, you saw him be up and down last year, which is typical for most freshmen, you know, in general. And I'm so glad that you brought up his rim pressures. I feel like that did not get enough love. It was just more like struggling shooting, and he doesn't look confident. And then you have Rob's better than him and like, get him in and those type of things. But it really was not a focus on the really good things that he did to help that team and showed on the floor. You know, so if he continued to play pick and roll, make those decisions, even though he shot 29% from three last year, just kind of looking a little deeper, there were some good things about the shooting. He did shoot 33% on catch and shoot threes and 37.5% on unguarded catch and shoot threes. So when he's off the ball, those are some pretty good indicators. We'll see. He's going to be someone you would think in the NBA will have the ball in his hands a little bit more. So you want to see him to become a good, you know, or to reliable pull-up three-point shooter and those type of things. So I'm really excited to see what he can do. It's another year smarter and wiser. You know, although you're in a different environment, you're still with Kyle. Offense is going to be pretty similar as well. And, you know, and you just have a much better feel to what to expect for year two. So he's definitely one of those guys that can take a sophomore leap. And kind of selfishly, I'm still a Trevor Brazile fan. So
Okay,
yeah. I think that him and Boogie are going to be crucial to his stock, just being able to set him up, hopefully, for easier opportunities, whether that's in pick and roll, get down transition, because he was just phenomenal with Anthony Black. Just having that type of pick and roll partner, and he can just use the vertical pop and be able to step out, shoot the ball. I do think he is a real deal, like legitimate shooter who does have some gravity. And then being able to play with guys like DJ and Boogie who can open up things for him, to give him more easier scoring opportunity. Because a lot of times last year, I felt like it was like, all right, he's going to settle, get into the mid post and shoot a tough shot. And then someone's like, okay, it looks great. Like, it looks really fluid that you can do these things. I don't like the shot there. That's not a good shot for you right now or for us as a team. But I see the makings and I see the potential there once we get everything else, you know, all the more normal, traditional big man things out of the way and you get more in the rhythm. But I still am in on him, and I have him kind of as in my second round right now.
I think that's totally reasonable. Like, I feel like he's one of those guys who's kind of fallen just because he's one of those guys, like every year he's like in the second round, and it just doesn't happen for him. Like, the feel hasn't really come along. His like counting numbers haven't really gone up, but he's like, I call him like a zoom out guy, where it's like you zoom out and he's 6'9", he's got like a 7'3" wingspan. He can run, he can jump, he blocks shots. I think he's probably a better rebounder than he's gotten to show, just based on the team structures that he's played in. And like, I don't know, like there's just a finite number of guys that like are that big and can shoot and block shots. And like a team is going to kick the tires on that. And I think Trevor Brazil is like a guy where like as evaluators, I think we can play ourselves a little bit at times and like rank him too low. And it's like, that's a guy that like might just, he's not going to get you killed. Like he's, you know, he might not be good. Like he might not be a positive value NBA player, especially if like the passing and the ball handling, like there is a real connective tissue that's missing in his game. And that's why he's still in college. But like the bones of a great NBA player are all in there. And I think the points that you brought up too about like when he's with a legit guard on a good team, like he can really look good. How do you feel about like the rest of their front court? Because like you've also got Ivisic there, who I really like. I think Ivisic is like kind of the same as Trevon Brazil, very different types of players, different athletes.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing where it's like this guy's 7'2", he blocks a ton of shots, he finishes everything inside, he can shoot a little bit. Like I've got him like early second, and I feel like I should almost have him like late first. Like I get like not the best mover, probably gonna be pretty limited as far as like what kind of defensive schemes you can run out with him, but like every year it feels like, oh, like this guy, like there's this demand for 3-and-D centers, and there are so few of them that can like actually do those things. And Ivisic can. And I don't know, like Ivisic is a guy I really like. And I thought Jonas Adu was awesome down the stretch for Tennessee last year. Like SEC all defensive team, can really block shots. I loved how he played 2-man game with Dalton Connect. Like I think he's got way more ball skills than people realize. Hit a lot of like long twos. Maybe he can shoot threes at some point. Like how do you kind of view Ivisic and Adu? Like, do you see the pro potential there as well? Because like I've got all three of these guys, like Brazil, Adu, Ivisic, like all kind of in that like top 80 at worst mix. Like I think they're all good.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on both of them. Big Z, like you said, you can't that size and that skill. Someone that can be a 3-and-D big for you. Was he listed at 7'2"?
7'2", yeah.
Like you just
Huge.
can't teach that. And they do, like you said, you mentioned with him working with Connect. I thought the 2-man game was very impressive, and he's a play finisher, better ball skills than given credit for as well. So like I think he is someone that really can sneak in the second round. And Big Z, like you said, like once we kind of go back and get our big board soon as we get those out, I think he's going to be someone that I may have to move up, because as we talk about him more, I was like, man, I think I have him a little bit too low. So definitely sneaking into that first round makes a lot of sense.
So with them playing against Baylor here, we've got the really interesting guard matchups. We've got VJ Edgecombe, and I think, to be honest, like I would throw Jaden Nunn in this mix too. Like those guys clashing against Wagner and Fland, like that's going to be fascinating. The doggedness and defensive pressure of a Jaden Nunn on a guy that had a rough freshman season and an incoming freshman. That's a lot for those guys to deal with. It'll be really interesting to see how they handle that. And it's going to be interesting to see how Edgecombe handles like coming in with a target on his back with two guys like looking to make their name. Fland is a freshman and Aiden Wagner is a returner. And then in the front court too, like Norchad Omier has been on the cusp for a long time. Like you want to show you can get it done against bigs. Like here are some bigs. Let's see how it goes when you're facing like NBA sized dudes at the big spot. So really, really exciting matchup there. We're going to take a quick break after this. We're going to talk through some more marquee matchups in week 1. Stick with us. So the other games that we're going to have, the one that you had brought up here was a game that like I was like looking forward to, and it was on my calendar for day 1. And then you mentioned it, and the more I thought about it, the more excited I'm getting for this one. That is Texas State. With the Texas Ohio State matchup, who do your eyes go to first in that game?
Trey Johnson, without a doubt. You know, the pedigree, Link Academy, McDonald's All-American. He's someone that should, and I expect to have games and stretches of games where it's like, all right, he's a legitimate top 3 pick, and he certainly has that buzz coming in right now. But I feel like there's not that much talk about with him within that big 3, if you will, of Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper, and of course Coop, and you usually hear VJ Edgecombe right in that mix as well too. So I think he's someone, even starting out with this game on opening night, can really set the tone. But he's long, creative handle. He brings a blend of pure shooting and shot making ability. I think he's a better, just kind of pure shooter than he kind of gets credit for, mainly because he takes a lot of tough shots at times, but he does have that shooting versatility, can do some stuff off of movement, the pull up game as well on multiple levels. And he's shown some really good advanced reads and fill and pick and roll as well. Has to be more consistent, but he's really good with his left hand. He made just an incredible left hand slick pass out of the pick and roll in the game I watched when they played against Sidwell last year. So I really do think there's a lot of upside to tap into him as a facilitator and a pick and roll playmaker as well too. And they're just kind of the shooting numbers for him. You know, according to Cerebral Sports, shot 37% on 589 three-point attempts that is tracked there. And then on Synergy, 40% in catch and shoot threes, 44% on unguarded catch and shoot threes. So I'm really excited to see what he's going to bring the whole year, the defensive tools that he has, what that looks like. And I want to really see what he does on and off the ball. Do they run him off some staggers and pin downs? Like what type of off ball use does he have, and what does that look like, and kind of show his versatility moving forward?
Yeah, I'm really excited for him. He was the guy that I liked the high school tape. I heard some really positive background stuff on him as well. Like I think he's a guy that kind of knows what he's in and is kind of willing to do whatever it takes role wise. Like people like him behind the scenes, but yeah, just so talented. 6'6". To your point, like the passing, I was like really impressed. Like he was one of those guys that like I've made this point a couple times, but like finishing the last draft cycle and then starting this one, it's like, whoa, this guy can do that. Like there's just so much stuff where it's like, oh wow, like a 6'6" guy that we're talking about, like a late lotto, is like slinging out of his live dribble with both hands. Okay, like that's nice, that's fun. Yeah, I thought his like handle stuff was pretty impressive at times too. Like really nice footwork. I like his balance that he plays with a lot. Like really helps him to create advantages with how well he can just keep himself stable when he shakes guys. Took some really deep threes. That sample that you mentioned from Cerebro, like huge. Like that is a real shooter when you're talking about somebody that age hitting at that type of efficiency. Yeah, the passing we talked about. And then I think defensively, like he's a guy with like length, balance, determination, good mindset. Like I think he's going to be good on that end of the floor as well, especially when you're talking about him at the guard position. Where I'm interested to see how he shakes out is with his finishing. Really poor finisher in high school, and like kind of for a variety of reasons. Like he loves the deep takeoff point, like way too far from the basket, lobs up some wild attempts, like some where like he'd like turn his back to the basket and just like throw it over his head. I'm like, oh man, like it's really confusing to me, and I don't know how much of it was just the role that he was forced to play at Link. Because you look at every other element of his game and like the feel level is pretty high. So it's like, I don't know like quite what's happening there, or if this is just like the offensive burden that you're being forced to carry, just kind of like waning on him a little bit when he gets inside. So I'm really intrigued to see how the finishing comes along. What do you make of that? Because he was like really inefficient at the basket in high school.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up the finishing. So, like, there are some elements of being a good finisher. He can use both hands around the rim. He has some good footwork. He'll get to the Euros and things. And just the extra point about the takeoff points, like it's way too far a lot of the times. And what do you think about his athleticism? Because I think that's also a piece of it. I think he's a good but not great athlete, especially vertically.
Yeah.
So I think he does have some trouble finishing in the paint against length, and especially when you're going up against NBA trees, it's going to be a tall task for him.
I would agree. I think my question, like, not to like immediately turn another question back onto you, but it's like, so what do we think the fix is, if it is like the vertical athleticism? Because like he can like get up when it's open floor. Yeah. And it's something that, like, people like really killed Brandon Miller over, right? It was like Brandon Miller had a really hard time figuring some things out in the half court. Where with Trey Johnson, I do wonder how much of that could just be like footwork and like how he loads up, if that's a fix, or is it like he needs to become a floater touch guy or like more of a mid-range pull-up guy, or is it like a craft thing? Like, is it something where like he just needs to work to use his length to get like better angles at the basket? Like, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I think athletically, like vertically, he's pretty average. And I think where it shows up too is in his block numbers. Like, if I'm not mistaken, like I feel like I remember his block numbers being like pretty low, like what you would see from a more traditional guard as opposed to like a 6'6" point guard.
And do you think he's a legitimate 6'6"? Did that on film, does that shake out right for you?
It could. Like, I don't have any
He's
notes
long,
personally about him looking short. So I would
Okay.
I don't, yeah, maybe, but I it wasn't something that jumped out to me.
The only reason that because I remember watching McDonald's All American game, he looked a little smaller than what I had seen like in Link and other ones. So maybe it just could be just the setting. And then one of the great things about getting to games in person, you can kind of really see and play that matchup game. And then, you know, I'm a little under 6'5", but just you know, just a sicko basketball person. I'm gonna round up and say 6'5". So
Yep.
yeah, you got to do it. So like
Mm-hmm.
when at games, I'm walking next to guys and I'm trying to measure and figure things out. So one of the great advantages about going to the games. But yeah, I was just curious if you maybe saw anything like that. But he's definitely long enough. I don't think there's anything like crazy where he's actually 6'4" or anything like that. But
Sure.
I just didn't know if he was legitimate 6'6". But with that length, I think that'll certainly be a help for him to be able to finish around the rim.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is going to be interesting too, because in Ohio State, he's playing like a really loaded backcourt and sort of an odd combination of backcourt players.
Yes.
I want to talk about Judy Mobley for a second.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, I like Judy Mobley was the guy, like when I go through like the RCI rankings and things like that, where I'm like, short guard, I'll get to him later. And then I've just talked to too many people that like I really trust, and we're like, you've got to watch him. You've got to watch him. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I watched him and it's like, man, I know this guy's small. Like I think he's listed at like 6 foot, 6'1". But like really great shooter, really great table setter. And it's like, okay, yeah, maybe this is a guy. Where are you at with Judy Mobley?
I love him. I love him. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very, very excited to see what he does, and I hope he's able to get the ball early and often this season. There's going to be ups and downs, but as you mentioned, like he is an elite shooter and shot maker. One of the things that I've always looked for and value are guys that are pure shooters and shot makers. He's a tough shot maker with deep range. If he do, you better not go underneath him on pick and rolls. I don't care where you are on the floor from half court, like he will pull it confidently. He will hit it. Has the step back, side steps, all out of tricks and footwork to get into his shots. Can play pick and roll, advanced reads out of that as well. The floater game is there too. Just super crafty. The shooting confidence, like if he misses a shot, it doesn't matter. He'll shoot another one that's deep. He can work off the ball as well too. So be able to have versatility on the ball, off the ball, I love as well. And I know you mentioned him at 6 feet, 6'1". Not the greatest athlete, not the quickest, you know, but he changes pace well offensively with a tricky handle too. And I think like he actually has a little bit more size on him as well. Like I do kind of like the overall frame, despite him being shorter. And I do think there is some things to work with him, and be able to add strength and be able to use that and snake guys and do a lot of different things. So I'm really excited to see what he can do defensively. You know, I just want to see just some effort from him, which
Yeah.
I think he does. But that's never going to be the strong suit of his game. And I hate to throw out these type of names, but I'll just say it like this: he's in the school of Trae Young and Steph. Like he's in that school. I'm not saying he is that player, will be those type of players, but it's clearly influence that they have had on his game.
Absolutely. I think that's completely fair. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see him out there. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles the size of the college game. He's going to be matched up with some vets out there like Jordan Pope on Texas. He's like a really polished scoring guard. He's going to make Mobley dance. Like he's going to make him work defensively. The other Ohio State guard I wanted to touch on was Bruce Thornton, who's 6'2". again, like not a guy who's a great vertical athlete, but just has that body that you see among small guards that stick. And he's so reliable. Like Bruce Thornton is just like, you hate to use like every point guard cliche, but it's like he's a coach on the floor, sees the game really well, doesn't make mistakes. Like he had a 7.8 turnover percentage. Like just he doesn't do
It's
anything
crazy.
wrong. Like he does not make mistakes. Good volume from three, like good at the basket because he is so strong and so tough. I'm assuming probably a 4-year guy just because the demand for guards is what it is. But I thought Bruce Thornton was another guy where like just the toughness that he's going to play with and the physicality that he's going to bring could be really interesting when he's matched up with Trey Johnson.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited about that matchup and see what Bruce does. And he's been excellent the first 2 years. My only kind of concern, or I guess maybe you can call it concern, or maybe just something I'm just really gonna wait and see mode. I do think he is a good shooter, and ultimately I don't think it'll be an issue, but just the decrease in his percentage with more volume. So as a freshman,
Yeah.
he shot 37% on 3.2 attempts per game. That dropped last year to 33% on 5 attempts per game. So where exactly is he as a shooter? And then, to be 6'2", I know you do a lot of other great things, which is fantastic. But if you're someone that's a low 30 shooter as opposed to someone that's in the mid or high 30s 3-point shooter, I do think that someone in his situation that could certainly influence his stock a bit.
Totally. Yeah. And I think especially like because he's also not like a Jamal Shed type of defender. You know what I mean? It's like he might, if you want to tell me like offensive feel wise, he's in a similar place as Jamal Shed. Well, he doesn't defend like Jamal Shed. So like that's another
Yep.
thing where it's like when you're smaller, like you've just got to check more and more boxes. And like Jamal Shed checked a million of them. That's why he's like playing NBA minutes right now. Those are the things that Bruce Thornton's going to have to prove. I'm going to do the one more guy question for you again here. Anybody on Texas and Ohio State that's like a deeper cut that you've still got some interest in?
I still have some interest in Caden Shedrick.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I still support him, personally. He went to UVA as well, he spent his time there. But I think he can be a guy similar to Jesse Edwards. I think he'd be another PIT guy. Jesse Edwards really showed out the PIT, does all the traditional big man stuff, good body. I think Jesse was like 6'10", 6'11", so right in there where Shedrick is. Cedric's a very good athlete. I think if he can get some consistent minutes, he can and improve minutes. Like he can be a double threat for Texas, and protect the rim on the weak side. He's a floor runner, lob threat. So I do like a lot of things that he can do from a traditional big perspective.
Yeah, I feel like Arthur Kaluma is like the easy one because he's like a name that like he's been on the cusp forever. But one guy who, as I was doing this, I was like, maybe this guy's more in the mix than he's getting credit for is Tremont Mark, who was also at Arkansas last year. Like Arkansas was kind of a mess, but he really scored the ball, like took over that lead scorer role, averaged like 16.2 points per game, did it efficiently, shot the ball better from three. The volume wasn't anything crazy, but like just one of these guys who's 6'6", he's athletic, he can make shots at all three levels. Defensive production has always been good, like not the worst decision maker in the world. It's just like one of those guys like 6'6", and it's like, man, he just scored like 16 a game in the SEC, and like you never hear about him, and like he's just pretty solid across the board. I think with another shooting season, Tremont Mark might be a guy who's kind of in that same PIT mix. At Ohio State, do you have a preference out of the sophomore transfer ins of Aaron Bradshaw and Sean Stewart? Is there one of those guys that you like better than the other?
You're killing me. I love them both. Like when you talk about Bradshaw, we spoke of other guys in his ilk, that 3 and D potential type of big. And then just Sean Stewart, like what an athlete. What physical tools that he had, a tremendous weak side shot blocker, floor runner, vertical spacer, thick frame, does all the little things well as an undersized energy big. I do want to see if the ball skills have improved in the shot.
Yeah.
I think he's like a 6'7", 6'8", so that puts him a little bit of a bind. But if I had to choose moving forward one or the other, I would go with Aaron Bradshaw.
Yeah, I think Bradshaw's like probably the better prospect and like safer prospect out of the two, just because like the archetype is so much like clearer with him. Whereas Sean Stewart, like I know the people that really liked him, like Julius Randle is kind of a comp, and it's like, okay, well then like he's got to really pass, he's got to really be able to dribble. Like if he's going to be that, he's got to extend the range out to three. He didn't shoot free throws very well last year, even if the sample was small. I'll give Sean Stewart some love here though, because like he just really makes stuff happen. Like all the rate stats for him are phenomenal, and like he just plays like his hair is on fire. Like he's got such a great motor, making stuff happen on defense, making it happen on the glass. Like there's a lot of refinement that has to go on there, but I just love guys that I know are athletically capable and have a bunch of ways to impact the game, and I know he's that. So that's another guy where it's like stick a pin in that name. Like let's come back to it. I think there could be something there. The other game that we had was UNC and Kansas. So with North Carolina, we've got some big names here. The one I'm most excited about is Drake Powell. I love Drake Powell. He was the guy that I turned on the film and I was just like, oh man, like I love watching prep tape where a guy just moves and feels like an NBA player so blatantly that it's like,
right away.
This is a much easier eval for me than like, I know this is a guy like I can have in my first round and like not get too nervous about it. You never know what's going to happen. I thought that about Justin Edwards, but you never know. But I just loved how he moved out there. He's kind of a tricky guy and that like he played EYBL, but then played it like a more, like I use the phrase like normal high school. Like he didn't play one of the Montverde, like IMG kind of schools. So it's a little trickier to evaluate that, but it did force him to play on the ball a lot. And I thought his shot looked a lot better throughout the year. So we're talking about a guy who's 6'6", moves really well. I thought the shot looked better. Big long strides to the basket. I don't think he's selfish. I thought he made the occasional like really high velocity pass that kind of caught my eye. And then defensively, like just eats up ground, super engaged, like gets to balls all over the place, whether it's in a passing lane, a block shot, what have you. Where I'm interested to see where he lands is like, I think the shot's got to be like at least pretty legit for him to stick as a 2025 guy. And then if we're talking like bigger picture, like what's the ceiling? It's going to have to be skill set stuff. Dirty Dancer in the chat just mentioned, like, don't trust the skill set with Powell.
Yeah.
I understand that. Like the handle gets a little too high. He gets too forceful at times. I thought his shot diet was frustrating because he's a guy who people have killed Ace Bailey for this. And like, it's not to the same extent as with Ace, but like, and I love Ace, by the way, like really, really love Ace. Powell can be like a little too east-west when there's a guy in front of him that it's like, I know you can beat that guy downhill.
Just
like,
go.
I do
Don't
not
play,
need
go.
you to dance.
Yep.
Yeah, like just beat him and get to the rim. So I think that can be a little bit frustrating. But maybe a part of that is like the handle stuff. Like maybe the downhill game just like isn't quite there. And like I feel like a lot of times with like 3-and-D guys, like people just go like, oh yeah, like Herb Jones or whatever. It's like Herb Jones was so skilled with the ball that like if you want to make the Herb Jones comp, it's like he was like kind of almost like a de facto point guard at times when he was in college. That like maybe it's a little more boring of a 3-and-D role than that if that stuff isn't in there. But again, like I talk about like the framework of a guy's game, and I love it with Drake Powell. I love how hard he plays. I love the athleticism. I think the shot's going to be pretty solid, and I think the defense is going to be great. What do you make of Drake Powell and how, I guess, like on like a 1 to 10 scale, how like concerned are you about like his just general like ball skill level?
I would say like a 4.
Concern. Yeah.
Like
That's like where I
still young in the process. You continues to get around good coaches. You put that work in. I think ball handling is one of those things that you really can see improvement. Whether or not that confidence in your ball handling translates to the games, I'm sure you can do it in a pickup setting, open gym, that those type of things, training and everything. But overall, I do expect the skill set to grow, and I don't think it has to like take this huge jump for him to have a very valuable skill set. And like you said, love that what you use the framework of a prospect. I really like that. I may have to steal that and give you credit, of course, but I certainly do like that. And when you talk about his framework, the outline of what he is, and he is a 3-and-D prospect with ball skills that are getting better, can defend multiple positions. that is certainly someone that you are thinking about in the lottery, especially if you do believe in your ability for him to be able to improve the ball skills and some of those core things outside of the 3 and D role. And I do have him ahead of someone like Ian Jackson, but sometimes
Yeah, yeah.
it's like, well, Ian Jackson is two-way as well. He
Hmm.
gets after it. He's an explosive athlete, the shot maker, the paint touches, So I do go back and forth on which one of I do think is the better UNC prospect, but it's early, and I'm still going to stick with Drake Powell right now.
Yeah, so let's talk about Ian Jackson since you brought him up. 6'4", 6'5" guard, also at UNC. Lots of guard talent on this team, which I think could like potentially make things a little bit complicated for him. But
Hmm.
man, I really liked the tape with him, and he's the guy that like the more I thought about, the more I'm just like, yeah, this guy does a lot of stuff that I really value. Like the like the New York point guard stuff is there with him. Like he's a Bronx
Yes.
native, and like he gets downhill, he's got the footwork, he's got the handle, he's got the vision, like he's got all of that. But like there's some real shot maker stuff in there that pops up from time to time. Like he's not a knockdown shooter yet. And that's where it gets dicey, right? Like he's got to be a
Hmm.
real shooter at 6'4". Like the floor for where you have to be as a guard, as a 3-point shooter, just keeps getting higher and higher. But man, like at times he'll like really, really, really hit some nice like dribble moves in combination and pull up from deep and hit it. And it's like, oh, okay. Like if that materializes more consistently, like then we're cooking. And then yeah, defensively, like super competitive. It's like even like in Dirty Dancer mentioned, like he was a guy that Dirty Dancer in the chat mentioned. It's like I think he's closer to 6'3". I did think he was the guy that looked a little bit
Yeah.
shorter than like the listed 6'5". But we've got still decent size for a point guard, plays with a real toughness, gets downhill, sees the floor, defends. I'd like him if he was a little bit stronger. I'd like that more.
Hmm.
The shot has to materialize, but again, like so many of the traits that I value in a guard are there with Ian Jackson. With North Carolina having so many guards between him, RJ Davis, who was a first-team All-American last
Yeah.
year, Elliot Cadeau, a guy who had a lot of hype a year ago at 6'1", Seth Trimble, who like balled out in a scrimmage game and dropped 33
Yeah.
points. Like, what are the odds? Like, what % chance do you think is Ian Jackson like a 2025 NBA draft guy?
I'm gonna go 65%.
Okay.
I do,
I think
like
that's
you said,
fair.
it's a lot of mouths to feed. I still think at the end of the day, like, don't know him personally at all, but I would imagine,
Mhm.
like, just based off the pedigree, he still wants to go one and done.
Mhm.
He will get a good amount of usage. It may not be the usage that he really wants, or maybe his talent dictates. So and then I really can see with NIL, of course, should have a more prominent usage role next season as well too. Him certainly coming back, but he's going to test the waters. I think he'll certainly get all the feedback that he needs, but I think he wants to go and is certainly leaning going.
For sure. That makes total sense to me. The other guy in UNC I want to touch on is Cade Tyson, a guy who I did for
Yes,
No San
yes.
Antonio the year prior to this. Um, really, really interesting player. Like 6'7", can shoot the cover off the ball, like high volume, over
My God, he can.
40%
Yeah.
both years, but like also a genuine like scorer. Like does the Bryce sense, like he's skinny, like he's like 200 pounds, but he plays bigger. Like he does some of that Bryce Sensabaugh, like can use my shoulders to kind of like nudge you a little bit and get just enough space in the mid range kind of stuff. Tough at the basket. Like he's an efficient 3-level guy. I don't know like how much else he does is like the thing. And like at
Yeah.
6'7", like that can be all you need at times. Like he rebounds pretty well. He's okay defensively, but like he's heavy footed. He is a fine passer, but like when he decides he's going to score, he doesn't really look to pass, which when you have like a 64 true shooting percentage at the mid-major level is fine. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, in the NBA, like you're not going to be able to take like 2 dribbles and like put your back to the basket and then hit like a fadeaway elbow shot. Like teams just aren't going to want that out of you. And it's tricky where it's like, is this how he wants to play? Is this how he had to play for that role? Like really fascinated to see what it looks like for him. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Tyson as a prospect, and how are you feeling about like the other aspects of his game outside of like the stuff he's obviously really great at that's going to have him in that sort of second round mix.
Yeah, that's going to be the real driving factor in this stuff. Like you mentioned, like, 6'6", 6'7", tremendous shooter, lights out shooter, can do it off movement, can navigate off ball screens and free himself up as well. Some craftiness to him as a scorer. It's just like I'm hoping, I'm looking for this year. It's going to be tough for him to get any like real on ball reps. Kind of goes a pick and roll player, but maybe if he can be a pick and pop guy, get that type of versatility doing those type of things, and try to add to what he can do as a scorer, and then just showing some more connective feel. Can he be consistent at making the swing passes, skips, and those type of
Yeah.
things? Keep the ball flowing. If he can do those type of things, and then just continue to be active and competitive defensively and tough defensively, I do ultimately think that what he does offensively will keep him on the floor and ultimately be able to propel him to be a legitimate type of second round guy.
Mm-hmm. So let's turn our attention to Kansas. I think there's a lot of things that we're gonna get to like that make this matchup interesting. I'm gonna throw this hard question at you again. Looking at Kansas, who's your favorite prospect on this team? Because this is another team where it's like there are like 12 guys, and like one of the things I wrote in the article is like I'm just interested to see like who plays, like
Yeah.
who does the offense run through, like who doesn't get minutes. Like I don't know. Like you could throw a dart at a dartboard and pick a starting five for this team, and I could be like, yeah, sure. Like, so from a prospect standpoint, who on Kansas stands out to you?
You're absolutely right. Like, it's going to be tough for guys to get the usage that they really want, especially out on the perimeter. Zeke Mayo's a guy to like, who's coming in and is going to demand touches. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to go with Rylan Griffin. I
Okay.
really
Yep.
do like the 3-and-D type of guy, and with his length, I was actually very surprised that he transferred. Like, you have the
Me too.
ultimate green light at Alabama, and he used it, and he took a step forward last season as well. So it was a bit surprising to see him transfer, but he just shot under 40% last year, 39% on 5.3 attempts per game. But the 3-and-D fit, the ball skills, can attack closeouts. He can defend multiple positions. I would like to see how he's employed defensively. Can he go and defend point of attack as well? So I think he was the leading guy for me too, for this squad, and I'm really excited to see him hopefully get the minutes. I think they're going to fluctuate, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
but I do like him long term.
Yeah, he's probably my favorite NBA guy on this team for the reasons that you mentioned. Like, he really shot the ball well last season. I thought he got better at attacking the basket. Like, his stride length is
Mm-hmm.
really good. He does still need to kind of fill out and get stronger, like you mentioned, like point of attack wise. That's a bit of a concern. I wish he did a bit more defensively as a playmaker, but like, man, I really liked what we saw from him as a sophomore at Alabama. Like 39.2% from three. I thought his decision making got better throughout the year too. Like, just a guy who like keeps the ball moving and can shoot and can finish and like looks good on defense. It's hard to quibble with that, even if it's not the sexiest thing in the world. But then, like, again, like you just look at the freshman to sophomore leap. It's like, all right, well then, what's that going to look like this year? Because it could be even better. The guy I'm like also just kind of intrigued to see is AJ Storr, who is like
Yes.
a lot of the stuff we said about Cade Tyson, it kind of applies here. We're like, this is a guy that really scores the ball. He's not the shooter that Tyson is, but he's a better athlete. He's got a better body. He's 6'6" and he's built like a tank, like can just kind of get
Mm-hmm.
wherever he wants a lot of the time. But again, like a guy who doesn't really pass, doesn't really rebound as well as you think he would, like doesn't finish quite at the level that you would think he would. Like there's just some things that need to kind of come along with him that haven't. So I don't know. Like, what do you make of Storr? Because he's a guy that I see on mock drafts a lot, and I'm just like if he's not like a knockdown shooter, I don't know how much this does for me.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. He may be the most talented perimeter player that they have on that squad. And he is an NBA body, like you said, 6'7", super strong, built like a tank, scores mindset. I think he's always going to be more of a shot maker than he is an actual shooter. And like you said, to make the comparisons with Cade Tyson, where exactly are the ancillary skills? Can he become a better defender? The tools are certainly there. He's strong, he's physical, he's long, athletic. There's some recovery tools there as well too. So it's just like, what exactly is he going to do outside of scoring? And he's certainly going to have to do that on the Kansas team as well too, with so much talent, and he's not always going to have the ball in his hands. So yeah, he's certainly a guy that I do like long term. I'd imagine he's going to be at Kansas multiple years. I don't
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
going to be kind of a one and done there at Kansas. But I think he's probably the second best prospect for. Actually, I won't say that. Well, I'll say this guy. I think he's probably the third best prospect
Okay.
in Kansas.
So who do you have as the next guy there?
It's a guy that I'm pretty sure we're going to differ on,
Okay.
based on some side conversations. But Floyd Badonga,
Okay.
I'm a big fan of him. I know
Mhm.
he's an undersized big at 6'9", but getting a chance to watch this film, I think it was last year, watching Pango's All American camp, and he just really stood out there and been tracking him since then. But 6'9", energy big, tremendous motor, super active, play finisher, athletic, still new to the game. I believe he started playing when he was 14. There's some
Mhm.
good movement skills. I think there's some budding ball skills there too. But he does a lot of the big man things that you want, run the floor, shot blocker on the weak side. So I really do like a lot of the tools. Not someone I would take in the first round now.
Sure. Mhm.
Probably wouldn't draft him this year. We'll see how the year shakes out. At least right
Absolutely.
now, I believe I
Absolutely.
have him
Mhm.
outside of the top 60, if I'm not mistaken. But I do think there's a lot to like there. A name that does come to mind for me is Adam Bona. So we'll
Yeah.
see a Dembona. So if we see um, we'll see how it shakes out with him and how he's utilized with Kansas, how many minutes he's playing. But I am excited to see how everything works out for him.
What I want to give Flory credit for is I do think, like, in the Bona realm, like, he might not be like Trace Jackson Davis as a passer, but I thought
Mm-hmm.
like he did look comfortable dribbling, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is nice. Like anytime you're talking about like a young big, like there is a comfort putting it on the deck. And the arms looked super long and his shoulders looked really broad. So like there was a lot of stuff that I thought, like, I'm generally like leery of the undersized big like type of prospects that aren't like shooters. But with
Yep.
Flory, there's enough like physical stuff and like ball skill stuff coming along that it's like, okay, there is like a real path here. Like I might not love him as a 2025 guy, but I do think there's some
Mm-hmm.
real juice longer term for him. Anybody on North Carolina that we didn't mention that you're interested in? It's kind of a guard heavy team, but
Yeah, it's a very guard heavy team. Are you just what do you make with Seth Trimble? Like you said, the
I don't
big
know.
year. Can he be a 3 and
Yeah,
D guard? Is it just trying to get too excited about an exhibition game?
that's kind of where I'm at. Is like I don't know. Like he just didn't shoot enough threes from volume. Like I just haven't seen
Mm-hmm.
enough in any one area for me to get too excited. So the Seth Trimble like scrimmage for me is kind of like, all right, I'll pay a little bit closer attention, but like if you're not like popping off a month into the season, like I'll just kind of move on. But I don't know. Is there anything that you've seen from him at any point that gives you like high hopes? I know there's people that like him.
No, I mean honestly, the more power to him, but
Mm-hmm.
his scrimmage performance caught me by off guard. Honestly,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I was like, he scored what? Like who did what? So
Yeah.
I was very surprised, happy for him. Maybe if he can get that volume up, continue to be a solid defender, there could be a pathway there. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in on it just yet.
For sure. And then real quick, I'll ask you about Elliot Cadeau because I know he's a name that like a lot of people loved last year. Really struggled to shoot the ball. Like, how do you feel about Elliot Cadeau coming to this year? Because like I'm like, this is gonna sound harsh. Like it could always change, especially if guys like have his level of feel. But like I'm like not viewing Elliot Cadeau as a 2025 prospect at this stage. Like I know that's gonna sound really harsh, and like I'm more than willing to be proven wrong. But like
Yeah.
at his size and like given like what the defensive profile is going to be, like if he's not shooting, like I'm just not there.
Yeah, and I would say before I get into it, that's a sign of the great scout that you are, just being willing to move off your opinion and willing to be wrong. Some people, I'm gonna just stand on this hill like he's
Yeah,
not a
he
2025
will
guy.
not
I don't
play.
care what he does. Yes, I'm gonna die on this hill. But
Mhm,
yeah, like he's a borderline 2025 guy. From like if he were to come out now, he's an X10 guy for me.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Um, just to still try to, if there is something in there, you might as well get on the X10. But just the size is a concern, as you mentioned, the overall athleticism, but the
Mhm,
speed, the playmaking, the feel, it just has to continue to evolve as a shooter because a lot of times teams were just daring him to shoot. A lot of times it was disrespectfully too, and he did
mhm.
step up and had knocked down some big shots at times as well too. But if you're a guard at that size and you aren't a consistent shooter, it's going to be very tough for you to have a lot of success at the next level.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of where I'm at as well. We're gonna do one quick break, and then we're gonna do some sicko games and wrap it up. So stick with us. The game that you went with here is probably my favorite, like mid-major game of week one, which is St. Louis against Santa Clara. Adama Ball is obviously a big name in that game. Adama Alpha Ball. Um, what are you kind of looking for in that game? Because there's a lot of talent on both sides.
Yeah, there is. It's going to be a really exciting game, and see, Dama Ball, he breakout year for him this first year at Santa Clara, come on from Arizona, parlays that into going to G League Elite camp and get some experience there, more eyes on him, and ultimately comes back, which I thought was the right decision for him. But in 6'6" wing. I think the hope is that he can eventually slide to a 3 and D role. Still need to see more stuff from him defensively, but obviously there's more you can tap into. He's been a scorer there at Santa Clara with the ball skills. Has a really nice hezzy move. Can get downhill. Tough shot maker as well too. 35% from three. What I want to see him is just continue to evolve as a pick and roll player for when that time comes for him to be able to facilitate out of there, make some advanced reads. There's been some signs of that. He's more of a scorer out of that than he is a facilitator. So those kind of some of the things I really do want to see from him throughout the season, and then starting in this game against St. Louis. I wish there was a little bit more of some defensive-minded matchups
Sure.
for him to kind of give
Mhm.
him an early test on the St. Louis sides. Their best player, I think, is College Joker, as his
Yeah,
nickname
yeah,
is,
yeah.
College
Mhm.
Jokic. But we'll talk about him shortly. But what are your feelings about Adama Ball?
I like him. I for a while last year, I was like really head over heels for him, and then I think the more I watched, I got a little bit disillusioned.
Hmm.
My concerns are I don't think he's like particularly good defensively. Like he doesn't move his feet super well at the point of attack. Needs to be quicker in that respect. I'd like him to be just a little bit more physical in general. Like I think he didn't really rebound as well as I think he should have, and I think that it almost limited him offensively, where he has this kind of polish and ball screens just score. But I think he's slow. He played at the rim at times. Like there are moments where he really get up, and I want to see him lean into his physical. He has a good level of finesse and talent, and I just want to see a little bit more like toughness out of him, and a little bit more physicality. But I think he's super skilled. And I really hope that just like getting that year under his belt is going to just up the confidence level. And we're going to see him like go out and like know that he's the man now. He had some great games against high major teams last year too. Like
Yeah.
his games against the best teams, like he was lighting them up. So really, really excited about that. The other name I want to throw out for Santa Clara is Johnny O'Neal, who's a guy
Yes.
that I liked a lot going into last year. He's 6'10", didn't score super efficiently last year, but just a guy who keeps the ball moving, can shoot off of movement, passes the ball well enough, like really good defensive playmaker, long, like kind of quick, good instincts. Like he's another guy that I think could sneak into that Portsmouth mix. Um,
Hmm.
on the St. Louis side, like if we're looking at it from an NBA lens, like the two best like prospects are probably Gibson Jimerson and Robbie Avila, who like both have real athleticism concerns. Like if I told you like you've got to take one of these guys on your summer league roster, like immediately. Like, which one do you lean toward? Do you lean toward like the perimeter shooter who can like move the ball a little bit in Jimerson, or do you like roll the dice on Robbie Avila as like this high feel offensive hub and shooter, even if he's like really behind the curve athletically?
Honestly, usually it would be the wing shooter for me, but with
Mm-hmm.
Gibson, like maybe 6'5", like in that
Yeah.
type of range, and not the side shooter I would like on the wing. I'm gonna go with Robbie here. Just we
Mm-hmm.
talk about a big that is that skilled and that talented despite the athletic limitations. Like he can really shoot the ball at 6'10", be a hub of the offense from different spots on the floor. Like he can absolutely kill that DHO game
Yeah.
and do a
Yeah.
lot of different things. So I would rather take that guy as a big man and kind of that unique ability and skill set from a big and bet on that. Hopefully get him into a little bit better shape
Yeah.
without taking away his strength. Some of that is a good thing to use that size
Mm-hmm.
and strength in the paint as well too. But certainly, I think he's a good project for a team to take on.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think even like this isn't the most optimistic case in the world, but you look at a guy like Grant Golden, who was like kind of hanging around for a while and was like good
Mm-hmm.
in the G League and like I think on two ways at different points, or whatever. And it's like it didn't click, but like he's a better shooter than Grant Golden. So like maybe
Yeah.
that leads to something. Like I think anytime you feel like a guy's an outlier in any sense, it's just worth stabbing at. And I think Avila is that from like a offensive feel standpoint. I'm really interested to see what he does body wise, because I think he's either got to get like really strong to the point that he can just hammer guys, or he's got to get
Yep.
quick enough to kind of compensate. And one of those has to happen. Maybe neither do, but like I'm interested to see where that ends up. And then we'll kind of go quick on mine because this is there's like one like super legit prospect in this game. I would say it's UAB versus Vermont, also an opening day game. On the UAB side, I'm just super excited to see Jaxa Lendeborg.
Yes.
Vermont is a really good team. It's not like the most traditional prospect team, but I think just the fact that anytime you get a sample of a prospect early in the year against a good team, it's interesting to see. Vermont is not going to be your more like traditional big team. Like it's not going to be the same as when, he's matched up with other teams in the American and conference play that have like a 7-footer that he's going to go up against. But they are a good basketball team, and how well he deals with that's going to be interesting. Lendeborg is 6'9", does a little bit of everything, can really pass the ball, rebounds his tail off. I buy the jump shot. It was low volume. That's something I'm looking to see. Like, is he going to come out and take 3 threes in the first game? That's what I'd like to see. But yeah, just a sort of a multifaceted big. Like, the comparison I made is like he's sort of right in between like Anton Watson and like Trace Jackson Davis, where it's like
I like
he's not
that.
quite a wing,
Yeah.
he's not quite as
hmm
wingy as Watson, he's not quite as like strong as TJD, but like things I like about both of those guys are ultimately present within him. Yeah, I like Lendeborg a lot, and I'm excited to see him against a good team.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Like he brings that blend of power, finesse, the ball skills at that size as well too. I'm right there with you on the shooting. I do buy that shooting. Whether it becomes like a legitimate weapon, I think that remains to be seen. But I do buy him as having enough gravity as a shooter and being just a capable enough shooter, and then the touch that he has as well too. And then once a guy that rebounds his tail off as well, I would take that. So I'm a big fan of him. And just a real quick one: did you have
Mhm.
any thoughts on Greg Gordon or Shy Odom at all? Did they
Yeah.
pique your
So
interest?
yeah, so the one guy I was gonna kind of throw out here, Gordon, I haven't done a ton of work on. The one guy I was gonna throw out was actually Jabari McGee at UAB,
Oh
who's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
6'1", like burly guard who's coming up from the JUCO level that can like draw a million fouls and like sort of run an offense. Like he's a guy I'm interested in. And then Gordon, he's like a Chicago area guy originally. So like he's a guy that like I like the toughness, I like the size on the wing, like 6'5", but another just like big dude. He's pretty good.
Mhm.
I haven't like I said, I haven't put a ton of thought into him, but I thought he was interesting at Iona last year.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I haven't put a lot of work into him either, but like bigger guard, rebounds, plays with energy is too, and some ball skills. So I was just curious. And Shy Odom, someone who I've seen when he was at Howard here,
He
more
was,
of that
yeah.
undersized big who's working on the wing skills, but as a play
Mhm.
finisher. Did you like him at all?
I thought he was interesting at Howard as well because he was one of those
Hmm.
guys that like there's refinement that's needed. Like to your point, like he's got to get like the shot going a little bit, got to cut the mistakes a little bit. But like one of those guys that you would watch Howard and like every 2 seconds the commentator's saying his name. Like he's one of those
Yep.
guys where he just does so much that like you can't help but take notice of him. And I'm not sure from like an NBA standpoint, like how it's going to come along, but I think he's definitely one of those guys that's like a pro somewhere when you're that tough and you have that many things that you can do on a court. And then on Vermont, like Shamir Bogues is the other guy that I'm like
Hmm.
semi interested in. Is like if he shoots it, he could be a Portsmouth guy. Like he's got to shoot it, and he never really has, which is
Yeah.
tricky. But like 6'4", big guard, like he's a guy I'm somewhat interested in also.
Good
So
names
that
for sure.
for sure. Yeah. So fun sicko games there. That's going to do it for this podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Make sure you go read the written column. Jam, where can people find you on social media and what have you been cooking up?
You can find me at Jam on the Boards. I'm excited. It will be next week. It will be my first, well, technically my second arc with No Slings, but it's first of our official launch. We really get things going. Everyone has some tremendous things cooking. I'll be working on a new series that it'll be, I think it'll be weekly, maybe bi-weekly, I think at this point, but it'll be called The Scout's Eyes, just be kind of a running journal of different things that I'm seeing with prospects throughout the year. So I'm excited to get that started.
Yeah, we are so glad to like have you fully on board. Super excited to have you on the team here. Loved having you on the podcast during the last draft cycle. So glad to have you on again. You can follow
Same
me at
here.
Boundboards on social media. And yep, I'm back to weekly on our end here. So make sure you subscribe to the Substack, NoSlingsNBA.com. Leave a review on your podcast feed. It helps people find us. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're subscribed. And that'll do it for this week. We will see you all next week. Enjoy the hoops, everybody.